Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Josh, and the following conversation is between me and Jonathan Morrison, and we are talking primarily about the AirPods Max with a couple other tech things sprinkled in here and there. A couple quick things here. The very top link in the description is going to be to his channel. I would recommend checking it out and subscribing. He makes some very high quality content. Two, both he and myself are going to have a full review. Mine is coming out tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline for his is looking like. So if it's out already, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Third, this conversation is nothing but two nerds kind of geeking out over some tech. So hopefully you like that conversation as much as I did. All right, guys, here we go. Thought maybe because I took them off, it'd be going through this, but I guess not. How's it going, man?
Yeah, good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing good. When I started getting into the audio stuff, I went to a show called RMAF, which is like an audio show, and I hated it. And I hated it because like all the people were like just generic, old audiophile, like bitter at everything. And I don't like being a critic. I like reviewing things, but I don't like being like, there's no sense in hating on stuff. I don't feel like I like to keep the positivity. And it seems like you're the same way.
Yeah, like I think, you know, because you do a good job of saying like, well, this is what it is, and if it works for you, great, and if it doesn't, then cool. And I think that's my goal lately, especially, is there's a real bad trend in especially the tech space where people are quick to assume that you don't need this, and it's like, let me at least try and explain this feature and why you might need it. And I'm not going to assume you're stupid, and maybe it benefits you, and if it does, great, and if not, at least you know. And I think you do a great job of that.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. I think it like one of the things that I like about these the most, like just a super quirky feature, but I like it way more than I should, is the pass-through audio. It's like incredible. Like it's so good and it works so well. Like I have a buddy who it doesn't work super well with. I guess it kind of depends on your ear shape on how well it works. But to me, it's like almost real life. It's like 95% there. And that imaging and sound staging capability and like people sound like actual people in a room. And that's nuts.
Yeah.
But it has like nothing to do with the core features of the headphone. I don't know.
I think that's an underestimated thing that I think we'll see more of in the future when they get into all the AR and things like that, just because I feel like the more I've kind of gone through life, the best people that I ever work with, they learn to use the tools for what they're intended for. And to that sentiment, right? It's like I feel like a lot of people are buying these headphones and the first thing they want to do is plug in the DAC and the aux and the wire instead of trying them, you know, what they're intended for, as opposed, because it's like, if I'm going to spend $500, you know, on a pair of wired headphones, like there's no way these are going to outperform, you know, headphones in that class and a proper DAC and a headphone amp. But, you know, trying to use them wireless or with spatial audio or with I think those are the things that you got to kind of try and appreciate.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's a device and you have to encompass the device aspect of like, it's not a singular use thing. Like, you know, you plug in an actual pair of headphones, like it's really good. And like a race car, it's really good in one specific area, but it's not like a family sedan. This is kind of like the all-use family sedan of the audio world, you know?
And like there's like a lot of dumb things about it. Like I agree with you, the case is stupid.
Yeah, it's kind of dumb.
And, like you kind of elaborated on the sense that your gripe was you have to put the headphones in an uncomfortable shape, which could, you know, affect the wear and tear over time. And for me, I think what was so great about, especially the original AirPods, is that you didn't have to think about putting them in the case. It was like, pop them out of your pocket. You can almost one hand, no look, pop them back in. Whereas with this, especially with AirPods Max, you have to think about putting them back in that case.
And like, if you get the wrong side, you can't charge it easily. Like, it's a pain. I feel like it's one. So, have you ever heard of a mnemonic device? You familiar with that?
Vaguely. You can school me right now.
It's basically a memory tool that you can use to associate specific things with something you're very familiar with. So people use it in card counting with people they know or with cars or something that they're familiar with. Apple, I think, uses it for a lot of their designs to be familiar with things that are common, like cheese graters and floss and bras or purses. So I feel like it's partially that. And this is just theory, obviously. They won't confirm anything. But I also think it's just like, either they're coming out with a nicer case later that you can buy separately, or it's just a really dumb, really dumb engineering decision, you know?
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be that pro case that has battery, that has, hard case that it's probably going to cost 150, $200, which sucks. But I feel like my general sentiment is for $550, you should get a case. And sound quality aside, features aside, I don't feel comfortable throwing them in my backpack right now, which is my biggest thing. For me, they're almost this at-home Eames chair, kick back, and enjoy something kind of experience where I don't feel good putting it in a bag, especially for the price.
Yeah, I could see that. Like the case it doesn't do half the functions of a normal case, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth with like the functionality versus form thing, where I'm thinking like, okay, if you don't put it in the case, you don't get as good battery life. Like that's one of the main and one of the only features that the case actually offers. But it's forced into the design.
Right.
It's not like something that's just convenient. I also go on the flip side where I'm like, well, my phone has less battery life than this does, and I charge my phone every night too, and that's no problem. And this can go like a few days without being in the case or charged, and it'll still work just fine. But yeah, carrying it seems like it's not like a super functional, well-engineered product like the AirPods were. Or the Pros were, sorry.
Yeah.
I think like for me, I wouldn't buy this, but I would totally buy the Pro for sure.
Yeah, I think I feel a similar sentiment to you. Like, as cool as these are, and they do sound good, I could live without them, is my general sentiment.
Yeah, I think so too. And like I think the person it's for is not an average person, because $500 for a headphone for an average person is kind of ridiculous. And it's not for audiophiles, because they prefer like, no Bluetooth, wired in, got your DAC, your amp, your FLAC files, all that fun stuff. But it's like, it's for someone who wants the best of something that has this specific feature set, or just someone who really likes Apple. But that's it, and that's a large group of people, because a lot of people like Apple. But that's that's your area. But then it's not like they stopped producing the AirPods, the standard AirPods and the Pro and stuff. So it's not forced; it's optional.
Yeah, and I think what this is there was an analogy where this is kind of like the Model S or X, and what people really need to pay attention to is when they come out with the Model 3, which I would presume is going to be on ear, more affordable, somewhere in between this and AirPods Pro. And that, I think, will be the more mainstream headphone, whereas this is kind of like, hey, let's get it out of the gate. Let's get it in people's hands. When they bring spatial audio to Apple TV and you can use these in a home theater environment, I think that's where they instantly have more value.
Do you think that's more likely than like a Max S that's like $900 in open back but has the same features?
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, because interestingly enough, they didn't add Pro to this name. So that kind of gives us the notion that a higher end model is coming. And, we could pipe dream, and I would love at some point, I think they have the capabilities, but there needs to be some sort of title competitor, whether it's Spotify or Apple. And one thing they used to do well was like lossless AirPlay. So if there's some higher end option and they bring out a better file format, right? Because we have LDAC and all these more advanced Bluetooth codecs on Android and things like that. Whereas with this, we're kind of stuck with 256 AAC. And I think, if they do go the Pro route and there's a higher end headphone, I think that has to come alongside with it.
Yeah, I would say probably. But they seemingly make some design choices that are questionable. Because I think a lot of people, like the turning off thing, like you can't turn them off easily, and you can't do 3.5 millimeter in bypassing the either wireless or the DAC that's built in here. With Apple, it's always this weird thing where you're sure it's going to be built well, but you're not quite sure what the compromises are going to end up being in the future products. And that's always, I like to theorize, but in reality, I have no
Yeah.
idea. I'm lost.
I think it's just for me. I try to put myself in the situation of let me use this how it was intended to be used, I guess, because the minute, and I would relate it to Final Cut, right? The minute someone tries to treat it like Premiere and not use it like it was built for, then you run into those problems. And for me, I found using these things wired ends up being more of a pain. One, the instinctively I want to have all the ports and the buttons on the left side and they're on the right. And as a right-handed mouse user, having the cable here coming down my right shoulder, like that ends up being annoying. Where most headphones in a wired pair, I can have the cable coming down the left, and then I can even throw in like a dragonfly on the left side of my computer, so everything kind of makes sense. Or if I have an audio interface, my left hand is reaching for the knob, whereas with AirPods Max, having the cable and everything on the right side just makes it feel weird. So I end up, what I've done is just gone back to like Bear Dynamic. If I'm gonna go for a wired setup on my computer, just use those and then use these wirelessly. And that's kind of been a better use case for me. And granted too, these are expensive and you can't expect everyone to have, oh, these are my $550 wireless headphones. These are my $550 wired headphones. And, but that's been my best experience so far. Just, I guess, from a wireless perspective, as opposed to trying to make them wired.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about like use case and like the whole wired thing for normal headphones. I think to most people is a big inconvenience.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you get a higher end pair of Bear Dynamics that's like a little bit higher impedance, you can't run those off a phone. They're literally not loud enough for most people, or a laptop or something. So a part of this and all Bluetooth headphones is like that convenience factor. And like if you may not want to, but if you wanted to, you could totally throw it in a backpack and go somewhere. So I do feel like I'm okay with the right side thing compromise because it's like, I'm not really using it too often like that. And I'm paying for not having wires, I suppose. To kind of backtrack a little bit, I definitely understand the frustration with people comparing it to things that it's not comparable to. You know, like it's a dedicated Bluetooth headphone through and through. And, you know, if you're going wired, it's like you got to calculate amp, you got to calculate DAC, you know, and then you're stuck in one specific place. And to some people, that's appealing. To others, that's like, hell no. Like, I'm out of here. No way.
It's like the sentiment of PC gaming versus Xbox or PlayStation, right? Like some people like that sentiment of being glued to their desk. Some people want that freedom. And I think that's been nice, right? Is, you know, if I want to check, even from a music production aspect, you know, being hardwired to a desk, but then airdropping the file to my phone and having a reference point wirelessly, being able to walk around. Like those are the little things that I don't think you'll ever see on a spec sheet.
No, there's definitely like a consumer factor or like an ease of use factor, or maybe just chalk it up to like quality of life factor or something. And it's just like how people desire to use their products is almost more important than the capability of the product. You know, it's kind of like the camera situation. It's like there's really awesome cinema cameras out there that are pretty cheap nowadays. Like they're comparable to modern DSLRs and they're old, but they're functionally just super limited. Like they're tripod only. There's no gimbals that can lift them up, and they're good in, you know, again, they're good in that like one specific area. I think that like on the making video side, it's always hard to calculate for everyone's circumstances. I think both you and I try to kind of take as many general use cases and calculate that into our considerations in the review. But it is complicated. And then, you know, I may value freedom at like a 10 and you may value it at a 5 or a 6 or something. And then you may value something else. And it's like, geez, that's a lot of stuff to try and kind of argue with all at the same time. You know?
And that's I think what it's about, you know, because it's, I don't think it ought to, everyone jumped into like the XM4s or, you know, the stuff from Bose, but it's like, no, those are great options. And if you don't need spatial audio and you don't need those things, or you don't need to be in the Apple ecosystem, if you don't need instant pairing, like hell yeah, go buy some XM4s. They're great headphones. Or if you want a wired experience, go buy some nicer headphones and a DAC and an amp. But then there's just so many rabbit holes that you go down, because that's why I have to limit your channel a little bit, just because it gets dangerous quick and it's like, shit.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Do I need that?
I get emails all the time saying that my wife hates me, or their wife hates me, because we spend a shitload of money.
Yeah, dude,
Feel bad
it's
about it.
dangerous, man. Just like, it's a different. I mean, there's that can be said for anything and for cameras, but back to your sentiment about use case and things like that. As much as I've enjoyed like Area or Red, the FX9 works better just because of things like autofocus and ease of use, and it's all about the right tool for the right job. And I think the more people can try and understand that sentiment, I think the better off we all are.
I think there's like a learning phase with everything where you have to learn what you're going to use.
Right.
And that's one of my things with like the A7S III versus the FX9 is like I use gimbals that are rated for specific weights and lenses that are made for specific mounts, which luckily they're, both Sony, full frame mounts. But like all of that changes depending on what I'm using. And then especially with the FX6, like it's not just the additional cost of the FX6, it's like all the gear that is associated with running that.
Yep.
All that has to be calculated. It's kind of the same way with audio. Like you buy an expensive headphone and then you feel the urge to buy an expensive amp, and like sometimes the simplicity of these solutions is just unbeatable.
Yeah, no, I think AirPods Pro was an example of that, where it's, I have great headphones that are wired, but sometimes just not having those wires and cables is magic. And, I feel like, again, that's what is good about these. I just think they're at a little bit of a higher threshold, and once they get that mid-level option, I think that's going to be the better option for most people.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Like if they could get it maybe like 350, 400, like I think that's palatable,
My prediction is $399 on-ear headphones, because that's the other thing too, is like most people, if you just ask them on the street, oh, do you prefer on-ear or over-ear? They'll be like, I don't know. Just the ones that go over my head,
Yeah, I feel like though sometimes Apple will choose the like visual elegance of something over functionality. So I don't know about the on-ears, like, the form factor and the size is going to matter to Apple. I think they do a pretty good job of like making things in like a house brand design. Everything has rounded corners and is usually made of aluminum and good tolerances, and got the crown and stuff. And I'm trying to imagine like it just looked like an Apple Watch on their ear.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good look. Maybe, but I'm sure people would buy it. And like this headband would definitely work with smaller
I just
caps,
think
for sure. It's a pretty light.
I guess I just more picture like everything, because like that's why they bought Beats, right? And the Beats Solos, I think some higher end version of that, I think.
Do you think these sound better than the best Beats right now?
Yes.
How much better? Would you?
It's hard. I guess I don't often listen to Beats, but I feel like in terms of sound quality on a wireless level, these are up there, like in that price range. I know I messed with Bear Dynamic has some wireless cans that I didn't like too much. Those are like $500.
Right.
So
Are they the Omrons?
yes, and I guess I would just say they're kind of flat, which a lot of people like. Whereas I feel like this is more like, the best way I would describe it is almost if you were in a movie theater in your head, where you're getting a little bit of like the exaggeration. And I remember that was a notion from your AirPods thing, where Apple tends to push mids forward, which makes sense because, that's where a lot of the vocals are. That's where calls are for people talking to each other. So again, it just depends on the situation.
What I haven't messed around with yet, and I was planning on doing this today, was the spatial audio thing.
Right.
Finding content's a little bit difficult right now, but I feel like once you have a source for it, you'll just kind of stick with that if you want to experience it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But like things like that are invaluable to the right people. And I think that's what Apple's counting on, is like they don't have to hit every level
Right.
at an A plus. They just have to hit certain levels for certain people at that
Yeah.
A plus level, you know? And then people will find a way to justify the price. The only other Bluetooth headphone that I've tried that's like in the same ballpark as this, and I haven't tried the
Awesome.
XM4. I think that is actually what just got delivered. But
Okay.
the Panda sounds a little bit better, the Drop Panda.
Right.
But it doesn't have like a lot of the features. It doesn't have the pass-through. It doesn't have active noise cancellation. It's just really closed. But it's got like better mid presence and better mid consistency and a little bit better treble response. But you know, I'm saying that as like a headphone nerd, but to my girlfriend who doesn't care at all, she's like, "But these look cooler, you know.
Yeah.
These function better." And I'm like, "All
Yeah,
right,
and that's
you know,
what
whatever."
again Apple
Can't do much
Apple
about
is
that.
trying to appeal to the masses, I guess, but still bring a sense of quality to it. Like you said, like they don't have to hit an A plus for everything if they hit an A plus in certain aspects, but it's overall very solid. I think that's the end game goal for them.
Yeah. I mean, like if you set your boundaries for like what determines a good product, and if you're like, okay, I want build quality, I want good
Yeah.
active noise cancellation, all the check boxes that this has, right? All that stuff. If that's your definition of a good product, this is a hell of a product. Like it's insanely good actually. And it demands an insane price tag because of it. But if your priorities are different, you know, if those aren't your boxes that you have to check
Right.
off, then yeah, like it's not a good product for you. But overall, like if you're following Apple's kind of guidelines for what
Right.
is good, this
And
is
I
totally
think
good.
the number one reason, back to your kind of sentiment, the number one reason why you would buy these is, I think, spatial audio. Just because it's something that you can't get on anything else. The XM4s, you're not going to get that wired. Granted, the output is limited because you have to be on iPad or iPhone, and that's why I said if it comes to Apple TV, it's going to be a game changer. Just because, especially with how things have changed in terms of the pandemic in 2020 and not going to movie theaters as much, and especially for people who are in apartments or in small places where you can't crank a sub or you can't crank, 5.1 surround system to get that. And if we see similar things like they've done with audio share on regular AirPods, like two people chilling, watching an HDR Dolby Vision movie with these on is going to be crazy. You
Yeah.
know?
I didn't even think about that, but you're 100% right. Like that is like a personal theater experience.
Right.
But you can share it with somebody, but not everybody. You know, like you're not pissing your neighbors off. I have some bigger speakers in the other room, and I'm sure my neighbors hate me.
This is a whole other story for a different day, but I recently, because we have two spots, and there's a gaming channel that we do, and we kind of swap spots because our neighbor just, I couldn't ever crank anything like remotely, just not even loud, but we had these beautiful Dyn Audio,
Oh yeah, the white ones.
yeah,
Yeah, those are sexy.
and a sound system,
Yeah.
and like, I swear to you, sometimes like 7 p.m., it's like, she'll, cause I wouldn't give her my number, but she'll text like my business partner and be like, hey, can you turn the bass down?
You got a Karen coming out, coming through the woodwork.
Like
That's funny.
every time, it's like clockwork. And so like, I feel that on a human universal level of, sometimes you just want to enjoy things, and at the same time, you do want to be considerate and not piss people off if you're in an apartment, like I said. So, and then, you factor in the idea of like the pass through. It's like, so you can kind of hear the person next to you, and it brings back this kind of intimate moment of where it's not that you're tuned out, but you're experiencing something together. And that I think is cool, right? Because you can, if you're able to listen to the same source or the same headphones effortlessly, I think that's cool. But to do that on a media movie level, I think is even cooler.
Yeah, I mean, and there's tons of applications. Like when things go back to normal, you'll be able to like watch a phone in like a public place, and you and the other person, like you and your girlfriend or whatever, can both experience it. and like you get all the benefits of privacy, but with the pass through and things like that, and you get the benefit of communication and the benefit of being able to hear if anybody's coming up behind you.
Right.
I see tons of people like walking the streets with closed back headphones on, and that terrifies. Like I would never do that. Like I'm way too paranoid for that, man. But if these, I'd be like, I probably wouldn't do it. But if I had to
Right.
do it with something, it'd be this.
Yeah, at least you can hear the person coming up to steal your $550 headphones.
Exactly. Just snatch them off your head real quick. No wires to strangle you with either. Apple, I guess everybody, it seems to be the entire tech market is going personal. Like
Right.
everything is just for you, and you alone. And, that's, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's definitely where things are headed. So I think this fits right into that master plan. But now you get the opportunity to share when you want to.
Right.
And that's something I should add into my review, actually. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's just I think that's what my biggest sentiment with this is spatial audio. And if you try it, make sure you're on I'll send you a list of what device to use. But I know Disney Plus got updated. The Mandalorian is supposed to be good. I found
sick.
even weirdly anything with 5.1 on like iTunes stuff or the TV app, I think they're calling it now. The first episode of Prison Break is actually really good because it starts out with him getting tatted, and so you hear the pen. And do this when you're watching something as simple as to test the accelerometer and the gyroscope. Start with like panning your head. You'll hear things shift to this can. If you turn your head this way, it'll shift to here. But where it gets trippy is if you do a 180, everything will move to the back of your head.
Right.
And like that kind of stuff, I think is, again, you're not going to get that out of the XM4 or a pair of wired cans. And use case is going to be the
Right. There's
story.
a headphone company called Odyssey, and they make something called a Modius with a D.
okay. Right.
Wait, Mobius with a B. It's one of those. And
Right.
but that will take like non 5.1 surround sound audio. You can just use 2-channel, and it will do all the head tracking stuff. It doesn't sound as
Right.
good,
Right.
and I think it's like $400, but it'll still convert all that stuff. One thing that is like insane to me, not regarding the spatial audio, but the pass through, is
Right.
the sound staging capability of that stuff. So you can hear someone in the other room, and you can hear like footsteps, and like the door knock of that UPS guy sounded like a door knock in real life. But what's nuts about this is, and why this spatial audio, and I haven't really experienced a lot of it yet, so it could be like this, but there's a difference between like music sound staging and this pass-through sound staging. Nothing sounds like the pass-through. The pass-through sounds like real. Things have distance. I can hear specific placement of height and depth behind my head, and that's crazy, especially
Yeah.
coming from like 2 speakers.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, Apple is really good at developing product, or they develop a piece of technology for one thing and then implement it across the board. So like you noticed, there's the digital crown from the watch, but so much of this is all of the HomePod development, which started with the big ass HomePod, then made its way into AirPods, then AirPods Pro, then HomePod Mini. So it's this whole circle of Apple tech life that ends up coming full circle.
Yeah, their ecosystem is like miles better than everything else. That's probably the most appealing thing about them as a brand, is how
Right.
well everything works. But then you get the thing where like to use a lot of the features, like the switching between your different devices, you have to own
Right.
multiple devices and stuff, and that's where they get you. But yeah, this makes me, sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. It makes me very curious what things are going to be like in like 50 years. Like how
Yes.
nuts the
Yeah.
synchronization and the tech is going to be. Because, the day a headphone sounds like real life, it's over,
Right.
Like,
Well,
you're done.
even wasn't there something where Dolby was working on like Atmos for music? Because
Yeah.
to me that's kind of crazy. Maybe not in a studio session, just because there's the argument and notion of, well, you want to hear it like the artist intended and you don't really want to tweak it. But in terms of a live performance, to have that kind of spatial audio effect or Dolby Atmos for a concert in your head, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you like, there's some speaker systems that do really well, but they're, ludicrously expensive. But if you can somehow shrink that type of sound into, a $500 headphone, even in 5-10 years or something, like that's like end game levels of audio. That's
Right.
what you aspire things to get to. I don't know how close Dolby got. I know that they will do a lot of theater certifications, and I think I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but I think they certified Deadmau5's studio, and he's one of the only studios that are Dolby certified. And the explanation of the audio system in there that I've heard is that it's like a speaker system. I've heard that it's like, if you were to walk through a room, it would sound like the room is moving around you. So like the entire sound staging world kind of shifts in 3 dimensions, both
Right.
height and depth, as well as left to right, obviously. I don't know how true that is. I didn't experience it, but like that system, just do it. I don't care how much
Yeah.
it costs. Just get it done.
Yeah.
With this DSP stuff, though, like you see this in like jet planes, you see this in cars, like the introduction of technology and processing just
Right.
helps everything. It ends up making things maybe not as pure, but
Right.
if it ends up being better than the pure version or like the wired version, like
Right.
it's not there yet, but if we keep investing in that sort of tech, I'm sure it'll get there.
And I think that kind of strikes the nail on the head, right? It's because we already there's a ceiling, right? Like there are infinite amounts of high-end headphones and options and DACs and amps, and we're not really chasing that, right? Like we're chasing different things that are new that we haven't experienced. So yeah, it's cool that I think that's why I appreciate your take too, because even as someone who's highly invested into music and quality, you do a great job of at least looking at the bigger picture.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I worked pretty hard at it, so thank you.
The first time I heard you describe a sound as metallic, I was like, oh, this dude's legit. Like that's it.
Oh, okay. I feel like sometimes I do feel like I'm almost too vague, but when I watch a review, if it gets too overly complicated with the terminology, I just get kind of lost in the maze, and then I end up at the end not understanding what it sounds like. And I try
Right.
to look at it at like base level. What is it? What are you going to hear when you put this
Right.
on? And then you can find the specifics yourself. That's what I at least attempt to do. I don't know if I succeed at it, but that's
No,
that's the goal.
it's clear, right? Because like even if something as simple as sub bass or bass, and like think of the bass below the bass, or like you do a great job of describing it where most people can understand. Because that's the thing, right? Is audiophiles are going to be audiophiles. They're going to make up their mind. They're going to have their opinion. And at the same time, people who are just that deep in Apple, they don't need to watch anything to convince them. But it's that middle part where like how can you elaborate and how can you communicate just to regular people? And I think you do an amazing job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the compliments. Yeah, thanks. I think, for the record, I think you do like a bomb-ass job on the tech stuff. Like, it's the kind of the
Thanks.
same thing where it's like, you're not doing measurements, but I don't want them, Like,
Yeah.
I don't need all your benchmarks and stuff. That doesn't translate in my brain to usable information. I like the useful stuff. And
Yeah.
I'll just push your comment and compliment back towards you and say that you do a
I,
great job,
I,
too.
appre- I appreciate that. And like the last compliment I'll give you is just, this was a tweet recently, but it's like, I can't stand hearing someone shit on something and then it's like your A-roll and talking head or dialogue is garbage. It's like, so I do appreciate that, like, you're, like you get it, but then you're not condescending. you put the effort to make sure not only it looks good, but it sounds good, and it's just a good experience from like a user watching.
Thank you, man. Thanks. I don't like compliments
Yeah,
that
yeah,
much.
yeah.
I'm one of those
No,
people.
no,
but,
I feel.
but thanks.
I feel you. I feel you.
We'll move on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've taken up enough of your time, man. I appreciate you giving me a call and sending these out. I'll get them back to you, I think on Monday or Tuesday. I'll ship them out if that's okay.
Cool. Yeah. Take your time. Honestly, if it's after the new year, that's fine. But try spatial audio if you can.
For sure.
Record yourself. Like, I would love to see your reaction.
Okay. I'll try and implement it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
All right. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.